Well, good Friday, and thank you for giving us your time for today's DM Connect webinar, our ongoing monthly series of peer-to-peer led sessions. I invite you to visit dentalmonitoring.com/events to see the full list of 2023 webinars, which are available on demand, as well as to register for the 2 remaining events coming up in November and December. And my name is Sean Pemberton, Professional Education Manager for Dental Monitoring North America, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. And I am thrilled to have the opportunity to introduce today's presenter, and he's one of our newest dental monitoring key opinion leaders for North America. Dr. Jason Battle and his awesome team at Premier Orthodontics have 2 locations in Orlando and Winter Springs, Florida, and have been voted as Orlando's top orthodontist for the last 9 years in a row. And our topic today is one of the most frequently requested topics by our listeners, and Dr. Battle is a perfect fit to share the process and power of dynamic scheduling. Now, please note that all the participant lines have been muted, but if you have a question you'd like to submit at any point, please feel free at any time to enter your question in the chat provided at the bottom of the screen, and we will address as many questions as time allows at the conclusion of the presentation. The session will be recorded in its entirety, and an on-demand version will be available using the same link you received following registration.
Well, happy Friday. So today we're going to talk about on-demand or dynamic scheduling. This is a topic that I'm really excited to talk to you about. It's a new concept in orthodontics, and there's so few people doing it. And I felt like there's somebody had to go share their experience. So here I am volunteering. I'm the owner orthodontist at Premier Orthodontics. I started up in 2007. We are a 2-location, 1 doctor practice on the northeast side of Orlando. We have 11 team members, 2 scheduling coordinators, 2 financial coordinators, 2 treatment coordinators, 5 clinical assistants. About 70% of our practice utilizes traditional braces, with a small part of that being in-brace, and 30% consists of aligners. For this webinar, I wanted to cover the following topics. What is on-demand scheduling? Why do we use on-demand scheduling? Our experience with scheduling on demand, the benefits of scheduling on demand, the real cost of the system, and finally, some do's and don'ts to getting started. And I hope that you can learn from my mistakes. So, what is on-demand scheduling? Well, on-demand scheduling is booking your patients when they need to be seen. Instead of a 6, 8, 10-week interval, you're seeing them when things need to happen. It's new, it's different, and it's scary, but it's transformed my practice and made my life easier. We just have to get over some of the mental hurdles, as on-demand scheduling breaks one of the cardinal rules of orthodontics. Don't let your patients leave without an appointment. You have to trust the process and let the tech work for you. So how did we get here? Well, in the summer of 2022, I was having difficulty finding quality team members post-COVID, like many of you. I had a good core, but we were hiring warm bodies that weren't a good fit for our practice. And we knew they weren't a good fit for our practice. It was exhausting and it was unsustainable. Something had to change. But we had a bunch of bad options. We could downsize, but who wants to do that? We could schedule patients out farther, but that just frustrated them. Or we could keep hiring bad fits, and that's exactly what we did. We just kept hiring more bad fits. So I thought dental monitoring would cost too much. I hear that a lot from orthodontists. I counted the number of patients. I multiplied that by the number of scan boxes. I multiplied that by the number of months the patient would average in treatment. I multiplied that by the monthly subscription fee. And that's a pretty big number. We decided to go into a different direction to avoid the cost of dental monitoring. We created non-doctor appointments, which relied on pre-planning future appointments. The next visit, the next visit. These appointments would go to patients that no-showed or rescheduled last minute, which we had a huge spike of post-COVID of about 25%. Well, this created some problems, as you can imagine. I mean, it kind of worked. However, we had less ability to know what was happening with our patients. Also, parents didn't like that I wasn't there for the child's appointment, even though they no-showed and rescheduled last minute multiple times. I was expected to be on demand when they decided to come in. So enter Dr. Alyssa Carter from Sherman, Texas. She came to Orlando to give a presentation on dental monitoring. Dr. Carter introduced me to on-demand scheduling. My initial reaction was, I don't think this is going to work. I thought it would create a disruption in my office. I felt that if I let the patient leave without an appointment, that my front desk would be spending more time on the phone trying to schedule the patient, leaving less time for new patient phone calls. I believe that you should always start with your why. And for me, I wanted to spend more time with my family and my son. I'm an only child. My mom passed away 10 years ago. My dad is 77 years old and lives 2 hours away. My grandmother's 97 years old and lives 3 hours away. And I have a 3-year-old son that lives in another country. My time is stretched thin. I needed flexibility in my schedule. And for me, that meant a 3-day patient week. I also needed to find quality team members. What I didn't know is I actually already had them. I just didn't give them the tools to be effective. So we started using dental monitoring and decided to onboard patients that had 12 or more months left of treatment. Now, the strategy was to have all of our patients onboarded within 12 to 15 months. We weren't planning on going on demand. I just wanted to cover my tail for those non-doctor appointments. Month 1 for us was October 2022, and it went pretty well. We had a system for adding patients, and it basically went like this. We would sit the patient down in the chair and ask them to download the dental monitoring app. We would also get their email. Myself and an assistant would do the adjustment, the scheduled adjustment. Me and another assistant would show the patient how to scan with the dental monitoring app. And so to make it quick, we created a DM dance, which is bite to the left, to the left, to the right, to the right, to the top, to the top, to the bottom, to the bottom. Now open, and to the left, to the left, to the right, to the right, to the top, to the top, to the bottom, to the bottom. That was it. Quick and easy. And if that sounds familiar, it's because it's the lyrics to the Tootsie Roll. Next, we would then ask the patient to watch the dental monitoring video while not in the chair so that we could turn that chair over, and then they're out the door. Now, month 2, November 2022, that was our hardest month. We onboarded the most amount of patients, and we were frequently running late. Our dental monitoring rep recommended that we schedule out longer to free up the schedule. So we were scheduling 10 weeks, and we decided to start scheduling out to 12 weeks. Month 3 was December 2022. That was better. It was very similar to month 1. Month 3 was when we decided to try to go on demand. And this was a big leap of faith. I mean, what if the patients fall through the cracks? What if we lose patients? There were big question marks there. At month 5, or February 2023, is when we started to see the benefit of on-demand scheduling. But remember, we were only decided to go on demand at month 3, so it took about 2 months. The results? Well, the schedule was empty. We had holes in our schedule just a few days out. However, those holes filled quickly with patients that needed to be seen from dental monitoring. There were 8 a.m. appointments and there were 4:30 appointments available, which we never had a few days out. We didn't have any more appointment campers. There are very few people that know what they're doing 6, 8, 10 weeks out from now on a random Tuesday at 3:30 in the afternoon. Our patients take that appointment because they really have no choice. And sometimes they make it work. And sometimes there's a last minute conflict. And when it doesn't work and you have to reschedule, those patients have been on your schedule for weeks. And other people that wanted that time slot couldn't get it. Now with on-demand scheduling, those patients can get that time slot. So some of the benefits of going on demand were that we needed less team members. There were no more warm bodies taking up space. Patients had more flexibility. Remember, we had 25% of our patients no showing and rescheduling last minute after COVID. We had more supervision over our cases, and we avoided the duplicate appointments. My greatest frustration would be an emergency appointment that we scheduled for a patient that had another appointment the next week. I mean, why not combine both appointments? And we reduced the number of appointments from non-compliant patients, which actually increased our dollar per visit. So lessons that I've learned: start on-demand scheduling when you start dental monitoring or very shortly after. If you aren't scheduling on demand, then you're just adding overhead and you're adding work. Set your goals for things like wire passivity, class 1 canine, midline, overbite, and overjet. These will guide you as to when to bring the patient back for their next appointment. We found that 12 to 16 weeks was a good spot for us for the notifications. It will also open the schedule up for you. You won't get a notification until week 12, and you'll get an overdue notification at week 16. Set your 90-day notifications. These will help make sure that the patients don't fall through the cracks, even if an assistant forgets to set your goals. And use the app. I find the app is much faster than the web version. Communicate with your patients. They love knowing that you're monitoring them, even though you don't see them. I mean, it's the highest level of customer service that you can provide in 2023. And on a side note, the dental monitoring app will give you options. You are no longer tethered to your practice. And for me, it's battle on the go. Now you have flexibility to do what you want, when you want, where you want. The options are unlimited. This is all about getting your life back. Now, sometimes you have patients that don't scan, and surprise, those are the same patients who don't brush or wear their elastics and they miss appointments. We call them or text them if they haven't scanned in a month. Dental monitoring will actually message them every day. If they haven't scanned in 2 months, then we'll send a letter or an email explaining that their care may be compromised if they aren't scanning. Don't tell your patients that you want to see them less. That sounds harsh. Try to explain everything as being a benefit for the patient. Tell them, we want to combine multiple appointments and save you trips into the office. Or you can get the appointment that you want because the scheduling isn't clogged with patients who don't need to be seen. Dental monitoring makes the patient accountable for their treatment outcome. It doesn't take very long to scan. It's easy. And as orthodontists, we take too much responsibility for the final outcome when sometimes the patients give zero effort. Now, those days are over. So you're probably doing the math and you're multiplying the number of patients you have times the number of months in treatment, times the monthly cost of monitoring, and getting a very large and intimidating number. But this isn't accurate. The real cost is about 2 to 2.5%. Non-compliant patients will actually save you money, so they aren't a bad thing. It's also impossible to onboard all of your patients at the same time. For our practice, we went back and onboarded patients with 12 or more months left in treatment. But most of you will onboard your patients as they start treatment, and this will take time and it will save you money. The objective is to save appointments, thus increasing profitability per appointment. And that means scheduling less repos and bringing the patients in as needed instead of random intervals. Now, we use DIBs for indirect bonding, which is cut down on our repos. Again, it's about increasing the dollar per visit. Patients and parents love the dental monitoring app. They tell their friends, and patients are actually coming to us because we have dental monitoring other offices do not. It has also greatly improved our communication with our patients. Instead of seeing them for 1 or 2 minutes every 10 weeks, I'm coordinating with them from home as needed. So to recap, go on demand as soon as possible. Designate a dental monitoring coordinator or DMC. Plan your next adjustment so your DMC knows how to schedule when the patient is ready to come in for their next appointment. Let the patients know that they're welcome to come in at any time. They can change their colors every day if they want. They won't. However, the next doctor appointment, the next doctor adjustment will be based on their progress. And always phrase things in the patient's benefit. Dental monitoring will allow us to create all of your future appointments around your schedule. And this is on-demand scheduling in a nutshell. I could go deeper into each topic, but if you have questions or ideas, feel free to reach me at my email or cell below. I'll hand it back to Sean.
I like it. Efficient. Like it's such a big topic, and we always talk about how just the term dynamic scheduling has evolved over recent years, and we've heard everything from only when needed, on demand, or even asynchronous scheduling. But we really try to position as like, those are all great concepts, but it's really part of a bigger picture, or a bigger umbrella, if you will, where it's just all part of dynamic scheduling, because it can mean something different for everybody. And for some, it means extending appointments. In a case like yours, it means, hey, we're just not scheduling the next visit. We're gonna allow the treatment to come to us, in a sense, and see you when it's necessary to see you. Is that accurate?
Very so. So there are a lot of different ways you can do it. If you just need to add a little bit of capacity to your practice, you can go out another month by just scheduling out another month, but then putting the patient on dental monitoring, or you could just go on demand and on demand.
Oh yeah, and of course I love your use of the goals to help guide those clinical decisions of when's the right time, what needs to happen, based on the feedback that you're getting from the goals. And it's the way you set up the time frames, 12 to 16 weeks. So it's like, we don't even really have to look until week 12, because that's the beginning of that time frame when we think that this could happen. So 8 weeks, not necessary for us to follow that. We're going to be communicated with. So good stuff. And quick and efficient. Look at you.
That's what it's about, right?
Getting through it. There were a couple of questions that came through, and I'll just go through those if that's all right with you. So the first one, and if it looks like I'm looking up, I've just got them up on a second screen here, but we've started the transition towards dynamic scheduling and have extended our intervals from 8 weeks to 10 or 12 with the long-term plan of no scheduled visit. My clinical team is still a bit afraid of feeling disconnected, and my admin team fears the chaos of breaking that cardinal rule. How did your team overcome those fears?
I think I had more fears than my team. Now, we did have some patients that fell through the cracks, but what we found out was they weren't upset when we finally called them. Some went 5 months without an appointment. And when we found them, we called them, we brought them in, and they were perfectly fine. They were getting weekly messages from dental monitoring that communicated with them, and they thought they were from us. So yes, you're going to have a few patients that do fall through the cracks, but they won't be mad.
And secondly, first of all, love the term appointment campers and the visuals that go with that. Secondly, has this model of dynamic scheduling reduced your rate, reduced your rate of no-shows and last-minute reschedules that you referenced?
Yeah, definitely. So everybody knows what they're doing next week, but not many people know what they're doing 8 weeks from now. So it's a lot easier to schedule short-term than it is long-term, and that just will reduce you can make promises that you can keep if the commitment is a short-term commitment.
Because I know that's always a popular question, as people start thinking through the process, and they're like, and I think they just start going through all the what ifs. Okay, if I did, what's going to happen with, how are we going to be able to schedule in the afternoon? Like you said, you always had the 8 o'clock and the 4:30s. And so the third question that came in, can you elaborate on your process of using the DM goals? Are you setting those? Are your assistants setting them? And is the 12 to 16 week interval a standard time frame for all the goals that you set?
So at the chair, I will set the goal and an assistant will enter it into dental monitoring. For instance, if a patient's wearing class 2 elastics, I will set the goal for let me know when the patient's at class 1 and somewhere between 12 and 16 weeks. Now, we've toyed around a little bit with that number. We started at 12 to 25 weeks, and we felt that was a little too long. But you can make that number whatever you want, if you wanted 8 to 16 or 8 to 12. But the main thing is you don't want to bring the patient back until they're in class 1 occlusion. If you could eliminate all the appointments that that are in your chair because all you're doing is visually seeing if they're into class 1 or the midline's corrected or the wires ready to be changed, if you could see those without the patient being in your chair, you would eliminate almost half of your appointments in the day. So it's just about finding that sweet spot for you. For us, it was 12 to 16, and I tell the assistants to at the chair what goal, whether it's wire passivity, class 1 canine, or midline, or overbite overjet.
Mm-hmm. And I love this question because I know it's also very common. It's kind of the difference between the new patients and the existing patients that you onboarded as they were in treatment, because we know new patients don't know any other process. If like in terms of on-demand scheduling, they just think this is the way it is. But how did your patients who were already accustomed to scheduling that next visit adapt to the no next appointment model?
Yeah, any patient that or parent that had experience with orthodontics in the past, they were a bit skeptical about the concept of on-demand scheduling. However, once you explain to it that you're doing this for their benefit and they can schedule when they're ready and they're not making additional trips to the office unnecessarily, they totally agree with it. And they said, just call me when my patient or when I'm ready or my child's ready.
Nice. I'd be in that camp, sure. As a parent, I can be like, look, I'm going to like this system. Just like call me when we need to be seen. Like, I like that.
It's one less thing they have to think about.
Sure. And that's easy for me to say from a dad's point of view. Like, I can only imagine from the mom point of view also. So, Tracy, I know Tracy McFarland, our Director of Professional Education. I know you've got visibility to a few other questions that have come in. If I could have you share a few of those.
I do. They're coming in fast. So we have about 8 different questions right now, Dr. Battle. So I'm just going to start at the top and go down. This was a question from an anonymous attendee, and it says, can I ask how many patients are being treated at the practice? And I'm assuming that is on, dental monitoring.
So we've onboarded everybody. Last year we onboarded everybody that had 12 or more months of treatment, and now we're coming up on a year. So everybody that's been in treatment for 24 months is on dental monitoring. Now there are a few that either have an iPhone 1 or they don't believe in cell phones, or they just don't believe in the technology, and we just let them schedule as needed the old way. But it's everybody that's that starts or has started treatment for us in the last 2 years. So we're almost getting to 100%, or we'll be close to 100% on dental monitoring.
Awesome. Okay. Now, Heather Elliott she's a dental monitoring coordinator in Wyoming. So she has asked, have you noticed that your patient days reduced weekly by dynamic scheduling? If so, how much?
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday at the office. We purchased an office about 2 years ago, and they were doing 12 patient days a month. And one of the offices that we had, we were doing 8 patient days a month. So it was 20 patient days a month for those 2 offices. And now those 2 offices are doing 12 patient days a month.
Impressive. Impressive. All right. This one is Dr. Battle. How is your schedule set up to accommodate the on-demand scheduling? And then there's a second part. Do you have a free chair, or is it what slots are available?
So the schedule is wide open, usually a few days out. So when we'll call the patient we'll call them and say, hey, we noticed your lower right 5 is off. We'd like to bring you in for the appointment. The schedule a few days out, within 2 to 3 days, 4 days, 2 to 4 days, it's wide open, and they can get anytime they want. Of course, the middle of the day is the most open. We'll use the middle of the day. And now I have a dental monitoring coordinator, but all of the assistants monitor dental monitoring. So what will happen is that at least one assistant will have some free time in the middle of the day, usually around 11, till we get back from lunch around 1:30 or 2, and they can handle calling the patients and bringing them in for their next appointment, but we haven't had any issue bringing them in quickly, if that answers your question. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you probably just answered a couple of questions that are actually in here, because some of them are still, this is another one. Do you reserve time in your schedule? Another one is, prior to DM, how many patients did you see per day, and how many patients do you see per day now that you are all in on dental monitoring?
We had reduced the 2 columns. We saw about 80 patients a day before dental monitoring, and now we're somewhere usually just about 50 or under 50, 40, high 40s.
Yeah, that is impressive. And it's impressive that a patient can get an appointment the same day.
Especially when their aligners are in and they want to start, or their revision aligners are in and they want to get those as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. All right. So there's another one. This one is along the same lines, but the second part, I just want to read all of it so that we can answer the second part. It says, how soon can patients come in when you contact them, which you answered just a few seconds ago, but do you set the alert accordingly? Or how are you setting alerts?
So the alerts are basically if nothing goes wrong, if there are no broken brackets, there's no pokey wires, everything's going great with treatment. The alerts will tell us when it's time to bring the patient in. But as we know, there's going to be something that happens, an emergency, or the patient comes in for whatever reason. When that patient comes in, we try to progress the next wire or start rubber bands or do the next thing in treatment. So we're combining the emergency appointment with the traditional adjustment appointment to save an appointment time. And then at that point, we'll reset the goals for 12 to 16 weeks for the next thing that we want. For instance, if we place a 12 to 14 nitinol wire at the first appointment, we'll set it for 12 wire passivity, 12 to 16 weeks, and then we're ready for the next wire change. Now, the assistant already knows what we're going to end up doing for the next appointment. And so if the patient comes back in for the next appointment, they can start the appointment without me being there. So if I'm in a new patient consult and I'm getting stuck there, they've already done the adjustment. They already know exactly what the patient's, they're tied in the way I wanted them based on the previous appointment. And then all I'm doing is just checking to make sure that they did exactly what was written in the note, in the next visit notes.
Gotcha. 100%. And you're able to do that all because you're doing on-demand scheduling for you.
Yes. Sorry.
No.
I'm not flying blind. Most people that aren't using dental monitoring and on-demand scheduling, and I recommend doing both. If you're just using dental monitoring and not on-demand scheduling, then you're just you're paying to look at teeth, which is terrible. So I would go on-demand scheduling, and within the last week, within 7 days, what the mouth looks like, what's broken, what's there. What's walking in the door every single day, and there's no stress there. The stress of being an orthodontist was for me before on-demand scheduling was what's broken today, and what kid has a broken bracket at 4:30 that they didn't tell us about. Now we know what's happening, and now my stress is more about fixed lingual retainers.
Awesome. That says a lot. All right. Another question. Is there any other changes to move to this system, payment types of brackets, other software that you used or needed? Is there anything that kind of stands out on changes that you may have made inside the practice to go to on-demand scheduling?
I think you have to use the indirect bonding, that the combination of the on-demand scheduling and indirect bonding, which is going to reduce the repos, will dramatically reduce your visits, which will increase the dollar per visit you're getting. And that will reduce your overhead and help your margins. There's a cost to the technology, but you're going to replace that. I think Chris Benson has some slides on this. You're going to replace that. You're going to reduce your staff cost while your technology costs are going to go up a little bit, but the overall overhead will reduce.
I could see that. All right. One more. Overall, using dental monitoring, what are some of your treatment insights that you've noticed while having eyes on your patients more with dental monitoring versus traditional treatment? That's
a great question. So the first thing I noticed was how bad the hygiene was. I thought the hygiene was better, and then seeing it week to week, it's atrocious. I mean, with 75% of our patients, it's atrocious, and you'd be surprised. They brush and they clean, or they think they clean before they come to your office, but when you see them in the real world, that's it's pretty bad.
You mastered the art of denial.
Yes. All right. So we've had a couple of more questions come in. So, when someone on the schedule cancels last minute, is there a list that DM auto generates to fill those spots, or how are you tracking those patients?
So if they cancel last minute, we just ask them, we try to reschedule them. And if they cancel last minute, it's because we've scheduled them within 7 days, or usually within 4 days, 3 or 4 days, and then they've canceled that appointment. And so we try to get them back on the books. There is no, if you're asking for a report, the PMS report, practice management system report, that tells you if patients that don't have next visits, then you're not going to have that. And as you go on demand, that report will become pretty much useless. So we look at the what helps us is to see how often they've scanned. And so if we are getting another scan, and we'll reset those goals. If we're getting another scan, then we'll call them in to reschedule based on the scan. And then obviously there are patients that don't scan, and we'll get alerts on those, and they're in a different bucket that we'll kind of follow up a little bit more thoroughly with through either text or emails or phone calls.
Right, right. And I know your team is on that. They're, on top of it constantly.
Yeah, all of my assistants are on the phones, usually during the lunch hour, and we have a longer lunch hour, 2 hours, from 11:30 to 1:30. So there's time in there for all of those clinical assistants to do the work.
Right, right. Okay. All right. So this one is pretty much 2 or 3 parts. So I'll read all of it first, and then we can go back and just kind of dissect it. How would you recommend a large multi-location practice onboard dental monitoring? It seems overwhelming to make this big of a change in systems and training. How do you get through the transition, and how long did it take? What would you recommend for best practices to do this?
It depends on how much pain you're willing to tolerate. And I'll tell you, there's work to be done. And whenever you decide to use dental monitoring and go on demand, there's a heavy lift there, and it's going to take 2 to 2.5 years of work. Now, the question is, do you put that 2 to 2.5 hours, or 2 to 2.5 years of work into 12 months, into 2 years, into 18 months? And depending on how short of time that is, that will determine how much work and how much pain you're going to have to go through. So if you take all of your patients and try to onboard them within 3 months, then it's going to be a struggle, and you're going to run late, and you're probably going to have to hire additional people to help do that. For us, that was a little too much. So we tried to do everybody that had 12 or more months of treatment left, and that was still for about 3 months or so. Was tough, but it was just a tough 3 months, and it goes quickly. The easiest way to do it is to just put them on demand, or excuse me, in dental monitoring and on demand as they start, but that's going to take a long time, and it's going to take 2 to 2.5 years before you start seeing the results. So there's a sweet spot for everybody depending on the size of their practice. I would probably, if you can, have an extra person that's just at the toothbrushing station that's setting the patients up on dental monitoring. When they walk in the door, they're downloading the app, or the previous appointment, they're downloading the app. You're getting their email, and you're setting that up either when outside of their appointment, and then you have somebody at the toothbrushing station that's going over the dental monitoring dance, and that takes literally 2 minutes. We'll get them onboarded, and then there's videos they can watch when they go home, and then they can get started. But people are smart, and they can figure out how to work the app and how to work the system. But it just really depends on how much pain you really can tolerate.
Yeah, it just depends on how aggressive you want to be. And, as you're going through the process, as you're, putting patients on it, you're learning the entire time, because it never stops. The curve never stops. You're just continuously But would you say it would kind of be like, hey, I'm going to go from one PMS system to the next, so you have to learn a new PMS system? It's like with any change that you go through inside the practice. Okay, awesome.
Did that same 12-month time frame apply to your aligner patients as well? You know, those who had 12 months of aligner treatment remaining?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I will say, dental monitoring, we have a team of implementation specialists that do come in and help with that onboarding process. So they help you set up best practice systems to make it easier on the practice. So they don't just, you know, come in, implement, leave you guys, and then you're on your own. So they actually come back after you've started to learn the software a little bit. So then they are teaching you new and improved best practices. So that's, you know, one additional thing.
They saved us. Joy Foster and Michelle Coleman, I'll give you guys a wave. They saved us and made this process a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So now that we've gotten through that, we've had a couple more questions come in. So this is good because it's engaging. We have patients who are ready to start treatment, download the app. Oh, this is just, it's not a question. It's kind of like a statement. They actually have patients who are ready to start treatment, download the app in the exam room, and it seems to be working well.
Good.
So, and I'll give like another pearl. If you didn't get to join yesterday's webinar with Ashley Guess from Dr. Barry Benton's office, she actually shared when the patient calls in and schedules the new patient exam, they have the patient download the app there, and the treatment coordinators actually start communicating through the app with them at that point. And so it doesn't cost anything for them to download the app. It doesn't cost the doctor anything either, but it is a communication tool that they've decided to use. So they're already starting to train patients how to use that. And it helps them use it as a practice differentiator for them. All right. I am all out of questions. Oh, hold on. Yep, that's it. She just said they also have the QR code everywhere in the practice for patients to scan. And the records tech coordinators and clinical chair too. Awesome.
Yeah, we just don't like to have any question go unanswered. So we appreciate everyone's engagement. Love all the questions that are being submitted. Dr. Battle, thank you for helping us to address such a popular and important topic, because we know for a lot of doctors, whether they're 2 years experienced or 52 years experienced, the idea of dynamic scheduling and is such a big step, and it may feel like a total violation of that #1 rule or that cardinal rule that you referenced. But hopefully by you sharing kind of your story and your process is going to help so many others really think and work outside that box, stretch beyond that comfort zone to see what's possible. And thank you again to everyone who tuned in live today. We hope this will help you in the practice, but just as Tracy referenced, we do have an amazing team of training and integration specialists who are just here to support you every step of the way, including helping you make those progressive steps. Even if it's just setting calendar, milestones on the calendar. At this date, we're going to do this. At this date, we'll transition to this. Towards whatever type of dynamic scheduling model you think works for your practice. Thank you all.